Welcome into the PantherExtra podcast. Jim and I back second week in a row. All fears that the hiatus would extend any longer are gone. We've assuaged. Is that the proper use of assuage? We've assuaged those concerns.
Big words.
We'll start off with UNI Football adding a 12th game to its 2024 slate. They're at an August 31st date against Valparaiso. That is a Saturday, believe it or not, in college football. Nice early date, nice August date. I think that is week 1 of the college football season.
It's not the first time they played in August. Usually it's like they'll play like Iowa State or something, August 31st or something.
Yeah, I when 2 years ago, I was trying to look at how early the earliest game they've ever played was, and there were a couple of 20s in there.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly not an overly early game, but that's a Pioneer League opponent. The Pioneer League plays non-scholarship Division I football. Drake won that conference last year with, I believe, I can't remember exactly now what their record was. It's pulling up.
Yeah, you got all the high-tech gear over there.
Well, you could bring your computer in here.
I could. I should.
What do you make as I'm pulling it up here? Okay, never mind. I got it. Drake went undefeated in the conference, 8-0, went 8-4 overall. So they lost every single non-conference game, including a game against South Dakota State. But they won the conference, then got smoked by North Dakota State in the first round of the FCS playoffs. Valparaiso, on the other hand, went 2-6 in conference, 3-8 overall. They lost to my wife's alma mater, which is Indiana Wesleyan, and that's an NAIA school. That was in week 2. They lost 24-22. So it was a close game, but they lost.
Mm-hmm.
That's more of a compliment to Indiana Wesleyan, though. They probably spend more on football than you and I even. And then they picked up 2 wins in a row in November, Dayton and Stetson. Stetson coming in overtime. And then they fell to St. Thomas 16-10 in the final game of the season. St. Thomas got second in the conference. They went 7-1.
2 Pioneer League
8-3.
teams next year for the Panthers.
So now that we have the full schedule, they're not going to use the 13th game from the Hawaii exception. We have the full slate. What do you make first off of the game against the Beacons, the season opener in the Unidome?
Well, I tell you, if you follow that social stuff, that social media stuff, the fans are pretty happy because they were fearful that it was going to be another Big Sky opponent. So, and if you've heard you and I get taking a lot of heat for, scheduling 2 Big Sky opponents a year, and rather than trying to bring in somebody from the Pioneer League or a lesser, one of the lesser FCS leagues. So, I think it's a call it a bye game, a bye win if you want to call it that too. Get yourself kicked off the season, hopefully in the right way. This, things could go sideways for you when you do this kind of thing. Maybe Valpo had a great recruiting class or something, or so. But anyway, I think it's a good thing that they brought in. It gives them a chance to play a game, work out some kinks. They obviously be starting a new quarterback, leading up until they play their 2 big FBS games. And yeah.
Yep. So you kind of touched on a little bit of what I wanted to talk about. I think you couldn't have asked for a much better opponent given what their body of work tells us about them last year. Just given what you're replacing, you're bringing in an almost completely new secondary, almost a completely new defensive line. You lost your most athletic linebacker in Josiah Galvin, who was also playing a bit of a secondary role. You're bringing in a new quarterback. You're going to have a new center. You're going to have a new long snapper. You're going to have a new kicker. You're going to have a new offensive coordinator. You're going to have a new defensive coordinator. A lot of new
for the Panthers
when the Panthers line up against Valparaiso next year. That's kind of a game, that season opener. If they're playing Iowa, you're not going to get a chance to work out the kinks if you're going up against what was one of the best defenses in the country. You're thinking it's going to be a better offense. That's not a game to work out kinks and still come away with a victory, I should say. You can figure out what's wrong with your team in that game probably fairly easily, but not come away with a win. This gives them a chance to kind of figure some things out, get a little confidence, go into a game against a better Pioneer League team the next week in St. Thomas, do that again, get a little bit of confidence, and then go to Lincoln, Nebraska to face the number 1 overall quarterback recruit in the country and Dylan Raiola and my
He
beloved
hasn't got
Huskers.
the job yet. How can you assume that he's going to be the starting quarterback already?
They don't have another quarterback.
He's it? Everybody else left, huh?
The guy who played against Iowa transferred. He's at Nevada now.
I didn't realize they lost all their quarterbacks.
Jeff Sims entered the transfer portal. The Heinrich Harburg, who I think started the most games of the year, is not good.
And I knew Purdy entered the transfer portal, right, too?
Yep. He's at Nevada.
He went to
he's the one
Nevada?
that played against Iowa, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, Brock
sorry.
Purdy's little brother is at Nevada now.
Chubba.
He went to San Jose State, but then they hired a different coach, and so then he transferred again.
Holy cow, twice in 1 year.
Yeah, I don't think he ever entered. I don't think he ever enrolled in classes or was like signed or anything. So it was like the day he transferred was the day they hired a new head coach, and so everything fell apart. So yeah, then they go to Nebraska, and you're thinking, and Nebraska played very poorly against North Dakota 2 years ago. I should say that's not a gimme.
Yeah.
Matt Rule has things headed in the right direction in Lincoln from the looks of it. It's not necessarily what Scott Frost was doing when the Fighting Hawks went down to Lincoln, but that's not
a programming a message here that we're going to be talking about Nebraska football for the next 25 minutes.
No, you're not. You're not gonna. You're not playing Alabama. You're not going and getting an automatic. It's not an automatic loss. You don't have to put it on the schedule already. And then you're going to Hawaii for the matchup with the Rainbow Warriors, and as from what I can tell, not an amazing program. So I don't.
Well, yeah, still a lot of things to work out, and that's what we think. That's the big thing about this Valpo game. Yeah.
I think the Valpo game makes that first four, the non-conference, it makes the non-conference look a lot less daunting.
Yeah.
Than what it could be. What's your takeaway on that?
Yeah, I believe I agree. You know, you get that Valpo, and St. Thomas, a winnable game, although on the road. Get two road non-conference FCS road wins. You don't know what's going to happen to FBS. Like I said, Nebraska's still going to be Nebraska. That's going to be a tough one. And you never know what you're going to get out of Hawaii. That's a long trip. What is the flight? 10 hours, something like that. It's a long trip.
To Hawaii?
Yeah, it's a long trip.
It's like a 6-hour flight from Seattle. So
there, it's probably a layover somewhere. You're going to take a charter somewhere, and then you're going to get some gas, and then you're going to keep on flying. They're probably going to get in there. Like, I think last time they played in Hawaii, they left on a Wednesday, or arrived on a Wednesday. So they could be getting out there trying to get acclimated 2 or 3 days early. So that one's a tough one. So anyway, but yeah, those two, I like the early schedule. You get those in. It's a good call. I think that's a good 12th game. So go get a win, and see if you can be at least at the minimum 2-2 when you head into your conference slate.
And I just want to because we talked to Coach Farley on signing day, which was they released the 11 game schedule, and we asked him about that. And he said, with the Hawaii game in particular, he wanted to give people time to figure out their travel plans, and that's why they went with the schedule release on that day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they would make that same decision in retrospect, given the reaction on social media that you mentioned earlier. But
yeah,
getting a Pioneer League team to come in, a bottom tier team in that league last year, at that, I think kind of made up for the. I'm not gonna. I mean, people would say it was botched. The botched schedule release that was signing day.
Yeah. So it's just like I said, I like that. I like the ad. I think it's the ad they wanted. I don't think people wanted the fans. We're talking the fans' perspective here.
Yep.
The administration, the football coaches might think something differently, but the fans wanted us. They wanted a game. They wanted a buy game. They wanted to bring somebody in and buy somebody. I don't know if they're buying Valpo to have them come in here. Or they're paying them anything to come in here. But it's a good call, And speaking, you just talked about it. There's another signing day coming up in about a week or so. The Panthers might be adding a few more athletes to the fold there to help out.
Well, the transfer quarterback Jackson Daly would probably be considered part of that signing class, but he's already enrolled in classes, and he's already in Cedar Falls working on stuff.
I would be assuming too there might have been a couple junior college guys that we hadn't heard that might have been in too. So who knows?
Yep. And then just to wrap up that conversation, 218 days, 7 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds.
Holy cow! Figuring out the facts.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna put this up probably 2 hours after we record it, so just minus 2 hours off what I just said, and that's how much time you have to wait for the Panthers 2024 kickoff. A lot of excitement there. A lot of excitement in the McLeod Center on Saturday as Ben Jacobson picked up win number 188 become the Valley all-time leader in conference wins. And he broke the record again on Tuesday, but no one thought that joke was very funny when I said it at the press table. What do you make of the body of work for Coach Jacobson? And if you can recall any big conference wins that contributed to that, I'm all ears.
Well, I just think, what the right guy for the Cedar Valley. You just think about the coaching staff and the longevity of all the coaches that they have, and they're pretty soon. Mark Farley's probably the, I don't know. This might be close to the all-time winningest coach in the Valley football. Tanya Warren's within 5 games becoming the all-time winningest coach in Valley women's basketball. Just the longevity they've had of the coaching. Ryan Jacobs has been around, and Bobby Peterson's been around. I mean, those people, you think about that. It's perfect. It's the mentality of the family that they've brought around there. The culture, that's tremendous. But anyway, Jake does everything top notch. He's had obviously you can spot off all the great wins, the NCAA Sweet 16 appearances, the win over,
those did
Texas.
not factor into the record though.
Yeah, but a lot of, think about all the Valley games, they play 16 to 18 of them a year. So it's a lot more than that. So, think of the big ones. They got a big one Saturday. Drake coming into town off a loss to Missouri State, so on the road at Drake. So Saturday, that's big. I just think you
saw Drake lost in overtime at Missouri State last night, right?
That's what I just mentioned.
I didn't hear you.
You weren't listening.
You didn't mention in particular Missouri State, so that was the key word I was looking for.
Drake lost in overtime last night to Missouri State, so that makes things interesting Saturday for UNI at Drake at the Knapp Center. But anyway, just a lot of great ones. When you win that many games, there's a lot of great wins. I wonder, he's been here so long. Did he coach in the Dome? I think he coached in the Dome for a little bit.
Yeah. So we were talking about it because they got their 200th win in the McLeod Center for the men's basketball program on Tuesday. We were talking about it, and Coach McDermott got all the success, got the McLeod Center built, as they say. And then never coached in it. And Jacobson got a couple of games in the Unidome the first year the McLeod Center was in operation, was what we determined in the press room before the press conference. So yes,
that just popped in my head. I was thinking, wow, did he coach any games in the Dome? Because when I was in college, that's where the Panthers played. That's where I went and watched games.
Because when we were talking about the women, I can't even remember what we were talking about with the Unidome. Probably the renovation, but I looked it up on Wikipedia and it said it was a multi-purpose football and basketball arena. I was like, it's not a basketball arena. What are you talking about? And then I had to look up a picture, and there it was like, in my lifetime, it was a basketball arena.
Yeah. And, I don't know if he did, but I know they played a few games over at the West Gym in that transition period too, but I don't know if Coach Jake was part of that either. So that might have been, I'm getting mixed up here between McDermott and Sam Weaver and all those guys back in the day. So so just amazing career, that he stuck around as long as he has and raised his family here, and a lot of great young men. It's just congrats to him. I mean, he's going to keep on building.
Looking at big wins that went into the record, I'm going to go ahead and offer up 2022 Loyola Chicago 102-96 overtime win. Seal the regular season conference championship. Court storm. It was one of the first UNI men's basketball games I covered, so it's a pretty selfish call. I'd been working for the Courier for less than a month at the time, and I messed something up in that story. I said they won back-to-back regular season titles, and Doug caught it and fixed it before it went out. But I would say that's got to be a top 5 win, right?
Yeah, that's awesome, because Loyola was coming off their Final Four appearance, or did they go to the Final Four that year?
No, it wasn't that year that they went to the Final Four, but they had recently been
in the Final Four.
Yes, because I was in high school when Loyola went to.
Oh, okay.
It might have been my senior year of high school, actually.
My mistake. It's been that many years. Wow, that's crazy.
I'll look it up because I remember it might have been my junior year, actually, because I was watching.
My memory's
I was
shot.
watching the NCAA tournament at the restaurant while we were having our prom dinner or whatever, and I
you were a horrible prom date.
I wasn't dating my prom date, and so we were just kind of friends, and so I was just watching the game, eating my spaghetti.
Could have been attentive to her.
I was. we don't need to get Jenna on the show, but I'm sure that I was attentive enough. It was my senior year of high school, so I was dating my prom date that year. So that's that's a bad look.
Yeah, so you were dating her.
Yeah, that's tough. That's
and not
tough.
paying attention to her. You were watching Loyola play to go to the Final Four.
Well, we can get my wife Caroline on, and she can tell you that I struggle with that sometimes when sports are on.
My, this is just bad. This is a bad look.
I was doing research. I was doing research for my future career
job?
covering a Missouri Valley Conference basketball team, obviously. But yeah, that was a really, really fun game on Saturday night.
Yeah,
you can go read Coach Jake's thoughts on the Courier's website. I did 2 stories from that game, one on just the game, and then Coach Jacobson a little bit more focused on breaking the record. You can hear about that sort of thing. There's also I took a video of the video on the video board of all the people. Just the message to Coach Jake. So if you want to see that, that's also available on our website. So if you couldn't make it on Saturday, bummer, but you can relive the experience on the Courier website.
Yeah, it's I feel bad that I can't think of any conference wins. I'm sure there's some, but obviously I was there when they beat North Carolina, so that was a big deal. I was covering the football game that day, and I just remember a couple of UNI football players. They were warming up, and they actually stormed the court with the fans.
It's incredible to me that there was a time where North Carolina would come to Cedar Falls.
Yeah, is that crazy?
Yeah, because now Iowa won't even come.
Iowa won't come either. So so there. If you think about it, Iowa. There's a couple Iowa wins. Obviously, for me, the big one, is obviously when they beat Iowa in the Dome. Mm-hmm. And 20,000 people were there. That was a big deal for me. But that's not. We're getting off the topic there. That's not Coach Jake. So that's a lot of my memories are some of those games. The conference ones sometimes blend together because they've played so many big conference games, and then they start blending into the Valley tournament where you think of the Eric Washburn you won, and the ball bounces straight up and straight down into the to win a last second shot there. Who was that? Who did they beat in that game?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to tell you.
I'm not gonna be able to tell you either. Oh, but anyway,
Eric Washburn, you said?
Yeah. Wes Washburn. Sorry, Eric Washburn's a different player. Wes Washburn. Yeah. Anyway, it was an excellent shot. It might have been Illinois State or Bradley. It might have been Bradley. Watch, it's like Southern Illinois. Who knows? But anyway, last second shot, went up, went down, made the NCAA tournament. It was a pretty sweet shot. So a lot of that stuff, a lot of great games, a lot of great players that have come through there with Coach Jake, and just a lot of fun memories.
I cannot find it quickly.
It's one of the conference tournament championships they won, so it was probably 10 years ago.
Okay.
So.
All right.
That was the same year that they beat North Carolina because Wes Washburn was a key player in that. So
well, there you go.
Yeah. So
you ruined my transition because you already mentioned that Coach Tanya Warren is close to breaking the record as well.
I apologize.
She's 5 games away. I got the women's basketball schedule up because I asked Coach Jacobson about it on Monday. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, Coach Warren's 5 away, 4 away. 4 away was the question because the game notes for the women's that I got at the press conference said she was 4 games away from the record. That's from tying the record. So she's 5 games away from owning it outright. And Coach Jacobson said, well, we know she's going to get it this year. Because I asked, how cool would it be to, I left a little uncertainty in the question. I didn't want to put that on them. And Coach Jacobson's just like, oh, well, they're going to do it this year. So I got the schedule pulled up. And you're just going to tell me win or loss. I'm going to start naming them off.
All right.
And we're going to figure out what game that Tanya Warren's going to, and this is going to be the Jim Knows Nothing. It's going to be a prediction.
Damn it. Go ahead.
Illinois State tonight.
I don't even know how good they are, so I'm going to say win.
Well, it'd be a big win. Bradley. Saturday.
I say they win that game.
Okay. UIC on Wednesday. It's the makeup of the game that got canceled.
And so they're in Chicago. That's a win.
3. Drake, February 3rd, Saturday in the McLeod Center.
In the McLeod. Ooh, that's a tougher one. That's a toss-up. But it's at home, so I'm going to give them the win. So she ties it on Drake.
Ties it against Drake. And then Illinois State again on Thursday in the McLeod Center.
Well, I already have them beaten at home, so that's when they're going to beat. That's when it's going to be number 5.
All right. Illinois State, February 8th, Thursday, 6 p.m. Buy your tickets now. Tanya Warren breaking the Missouri Valley Women's Basketball Conference wins record. And if she doesn't do it, if they pick up a loss before...
Panthers make me look good, please. Panthers make me look good.
If they lose a game between then and now, they have one game of protection because Bradley is home that Saturday.
Yeah.
So she's going to have a good shot to win it at home because they have 3 straight home games. But then they go on a 2-game road swing right after that, and it's against Belmont and Murray State. Belmont, that's going to be a tough win. Murray State, they've already beat. So then you're thinking like, hey, it could get a little dicey. She could break it on the road, which would stink because
That would stink,
it would
definitely.
because getting
Jeez, I already called it. February 8th at home, Illinois
February
State.
8th. February 8th.
What time's tip off? 6?
Yes.
6 o'clock, February 8th. Be here.
I'm gonna, just because I feel like you're gonna get a better crowd for a Saturday game, and I want to be different than you. Go Price is Right. I'm gonna go the next game against Bradley. I'll say that the
You're
one
giving
game,
them a 1-game buffer.
the one game that they lose is gonna be Illinois State tonight.
Okay.
That's because you can read my preview and find out why that's gonna be a tough matchup. Preview on
I
the
read it and I glossed over it, I guess. The knowledge,
brother.
the knowledge didn't really stick.
But
I did read it.
Illinois State's a half game back of the Panthers for 4th place in the conference.
Panthers got it. I have full confidence.
Full confidence in the Panthers to pick up the win. That game is at 6:30 tonight, I believe. Kind of weird. Throwing that 30 at me.
Yeah.
Let's get a nice solid 6. Yeah, 6:30 tonight. Game's going to be on ESPN Plus. Also available on the Panther Sports Network. And tune in on Saturday. Panthers are going to face Bradley and Waterloo West standout, former Waterloo West standout, Hallie Pook, who's with the Braves now. She's having a real nice freshman season. Hoping to get a preview story out about that game. Bradley, if you're listening, please email me back. They have emailed me back, but now they're ghosting me on the interview request. So we'll go ahead and finish up with our final thought, set up a little bit. I have an interview coming up with Ben Robertson. He's the radio play-by-play guy for Wingate Football. He's dropping a little bit of knowledge on UNI's new offensive coordinator, Luke Falk. Jim, give me a prediction about the offense. Off the wall, it can be anything, like total yards, touchdowns. They're going to score this many points in the first game.
I think
give me a prediction.
there's a lot of skill guys coming back. So now if they can figure out those pieces at, along the offensive line, that's the key here at this level. You have to be able to block. You got to be able to protect your quarterback. I think they've got the right pieces of the quarterback in there. They got the right mix of guys. Aiden Dunn, Jackson Daly, right?
Yep.
Coming in some of the younger kids that are coming up. I think they got the right pieces there. So there'll be a little bit of fall off because frankly, that's the word I'm looking for. Frankly, quite frankly, Theo Day could make some throws that probably a lot of FCS quarterbacks can't make or couldn't make. So yeah, there's going to be a little bit different, but I think there's plenty of skill position players coming back that they're going to be able to move the ball. I think it's going to be a similar style of offense. They're going to try to spread it, again, and try and then play off the run. I think that's going to be. But the big key is that offensive line, replacing what I say. What did you say? 3 starters there. So
I didn't say any. I just said center.
Center. Okay. Well, pieces. There's pieces to replace there. So that's a big part of the offense. So you're going to have to be able to fill that in, and hopefully they got pieces there to fill that in, and then play complementary football to that defense because the defense has got a lot of question marks. So, but yeah, I think it's going to be. I think they're going to still see another wide open attack that's going to try to throw the ball around and be explosive. I'm
glad you touched on that because a lot of people are asking me, Ethan. People are unfamiliar with UNI Football. Opposing fans that have followed me on Twitter. Ethan, is UNI going to run the air raid now? It's like they basically already ran the air raid.
Yeah, I didn't bring that up. I was leaving that for you because Falk is a disciple of Mike Leach. So.
Correct. So is UNI going to run the air raid? They're going to you can listen because I'm going to ask Mr. Robertson that exact question in the next segment. It's going to look pretty similar. I think I said that last week. They were already pretty much there. But stay tuned for that interview. You're going to get an idea of what the Wingate offense looked like as Luke Falk as the quarterback's coach of the Bulldogs. Also, some pieces are starting to come into place in those other coaching vacancies. I have 3 other names that I'm fairly confident in, and I think they're waiting to have all 4, ink dry, background checks, everything figured out. But from what I've heard, these are pretty. I'm pretty confident in this. One of them was already in Cedar Falls, walking around the building. So you know, that announcement's coming soon, and UNI is not, Iowa. They're not going on a 87-day, search, 88 days search for the next defensive coordinator, next secondaries coach, next wide receivers coach. I think they're pretty close to having all of those vacancies wrapped up. But thank you for watching this portion of Panther Extra. Stay tuned for my interview with Ben Robertson, and Jim, we'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks. We don't get to any wrestling in this one. I'm bringing that up next week to Coach Schwab. Just letting you know.
I'm already bringing him a Mountain Dew, so I'm going to be in his good graces. So
you're not after this.
I wrote a really nice piece this week about UNI wrestling, and he's going to get a Mountain Dew. I don't know what more he could ask of me.
All right.
Welcome back to the Panther Extra podcast. This week we're joined by Wingate play-by-play broadcaster Ben Robertson. Ben, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Ethan?
I'm well. You told me off air that you guys were getting a little bit of rain. I got a little jealous because we've had a lot of snow recently. Certainly, one thing that Coach Falk's going to have to get used to when he makes his way up to Iowa is a little bit colder weather.
Well, yeah, I'll leave that right there because it's supposed to be like 65 by the end of this week down here. We're at the bottom of North Carolina, so he is going to have to adjust to that.
Yeah, we're getting excited because it was going to be like 35 all week. It was, hey, this is great. The snow's going to melt a little bit. We're going to be doing great. So like I alluded to, bringing you on to talk a little bit about UNI's new offensive coordinator, Luke Falk, not yet officially announced by the university, but I've received word that the ink is dry on the contract. So we're just going to go ahead and get an idea of what the Panthers are going to be working with next season. Just if you could go over your guys' season and kind of just lay out what happened in a broad sense, in a team sense. What did Wingate accomplish this year?
So I think we had, if I remember correctly, I think we finished up at 8-2 or 8-3. We had a couple losses early in the season. We started off strong, and a couple of losses early in the year that were kind of like, we probably, especially on the road, we played a school in Mars Hill. There was a bunch of weather delays, and it was kind of like, we should have had that one. We came back. That game was kind of a wild sequence of events. There was a fourth quarter delay. We came back, fumble right out of the break in the delay. Kind of a tough thing. Then we had another tough one that we lost at home. And then down the stretch of the season, we really kind of found some form. We ended up, and I think, kind of put a capper. We beat the number 7 team in the country, LR, Lenore Rhine, who that's kind of our arch rival for all sports. So it's one of those things where, whatever rivalry you want to think about, it's kind of one of those things. You beat them, especially when they're ranked number 7 in the country. It doesn't really matter what you did. You had a pretty good year. I think they were disappointed that they missed the NCAA tournament, but when you just lose, a couple games early in the season that you shouldn't, kind of how that goes.
Lenoir Ryan, that's where Kyle Duggar went, right? The Patriots safety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought that was familiar when I saw it on the schedule. So looking specifically at the offense, Luke Falk, the QB's coach for the Bulldogs. But just from an offensive sense, you've been around the program for a couple of years. Did it look different? Did it look more efficient? What were your thoughts on the offense in particular, and maybe touch on some of the injuries that you guys had on that side of the ball?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because if you really look at the two guys that they played at quarterback, really two kind of different type of guys. Noah Bell was really more of not a huge build, he could really run the ball downhill. He just got in a lot of RPO stuff, a lot of, play action, play fake stuff, and he was a physical runner. Brooks Bentley, who came in and was as a freshman, who actually had really legit high school career. His father was a Division I coach. He came in and I don't want to say couldn't run, but maybe a more pure thrower of the football. And to me, what was impressive was just that when we switched over to the freshman quarterback, being able to just continue to progress the offense and continue to play well. And then if you look at Brooks, even what he did from just down the stretch of the year and where he came in when he started playing, I mean, his first career pass was an interception. By the end of the year, he was, the National Player of the Week. So call me crazy, but I imagine the quarterback's coach has a little bit something to do with that. And I know our head coach at the time, who actually became our recently been named our athletic director, Joe Reichen, and he was really, really fired up to bring in Luke at the beginning of the year.
I guess go into a little bit more depth on, because it was his first year coaching. He'd been out in Utah training high school prospects, and then he joins the coaching staff. Go into a little bit about what it was like acquiring and then just adding him to the staff and what you remember from that addition.
Well, interestingly, I was just talking to, Coach Reich last week, and he was kind of telling me we were, you know, kind of just ecstatic to get him because we knew when you look at just the playing resume in college and then got, spending time with a couple of different organizations in the NFL, I think pretty impressive stuff. So Coach Rick, I mean, the first thing he said to me actually when I was talking to him, kind of prepping with this, because I know you knew we were going to talk about this, he was like, well, rising star. And we knew we were honestly kind of lucky to get him and knew he might get scooped up quickly, especially if we have some success. So I think he was just excited just to get him working in the building, with, even if it is just for 1 year, just to have that experience. This guy's been, an all Pac-12 performer, played in the NFL. And I think just to get that rubbing off on your quarterbacks in, any room, I think was a pretty big thing.
And if you look at just the 3-year average, taking away 2020, going 2019, 2021, 2022, Falk had the Bulldogs passing game a little bit more efficient. They were completing about 10% more of their throws than they had the 3 years previous. They were throwing for about 33 more yards per game. Was there any big shifts in the passing attack this last year as opposed to years past? I know you guys had the same offensive coordinator, but did you notice anything big that just kind of like, hey, this is kind of different?
It opened up a little bit, to be quite honest. We had a guy his name was Chuck Rocker, and he was there for 4 or 5 years, and he, I guess 5 or 6 years really. But he was kind of a staple guy, but for us. But even if you looked at and I think part of this maybe is personnel a little bit, but you think if you looked at where it was from the past few years, like you're saying, you're just looking at the numbers. There was clearly a progression there, and especially down the stretch of the year, I thought behind the back half of the year, there was clearly a big progression there. The offense just opened up. It wasn't, when we went to the Elite Eight, I guess not this year, but the past year, which is our farthest, effort ever as a program. It was a defensive team, and not that we didn't rely on our defense this past year, but that's what we were winning games on. We weren't trying to, we had some big wins. We put some numbers up here and there, but we were trying to run the ball and win games defensively. When you look at this Lenore-Rhine game, if you were watching down the stretch of that game, I mean, there was we just need to run the ball to win this. I mean, we were opened up. The passing game was open up. We were going on. We scored a 75-yard touchdown, win the game with 50 seconds left, So just things like that, you didn't really get the sense. Like, for instance, to go 75 yards with 50 seconds left, I know you guys weren't there. Whoever's watching didn't see the game, but that's how our last home game of the year ended. To do that and just have the confidence of that, you didn't really get the sense maybe in past years that, we could just go 75 yards and win this game through the air,
Well, because I know that they're on YouTube, because that's how I found you to do this interview. If you could pick a game that would be the best example, or maybe Coach Falk's best foot forward for UNI fans to go back to that YouTube channel and watch and kind of get an idea of what he can be capable of, what game would you suggest they go back and watch?
Yeah, check that. Honestly, check that Lenore-Rhine game out. To be quite honest, I know I've kind of harped on it a bunch of times, but that's A, it was a great game, and B, I think we ended up putting up close. I think put up 34 points. It was a pretty legit effort, and I think that would be probably a pretty solid one to go with.
And then I can think of a couple instances. We really liked Coach Bodie Reeder. He was the offensive coordinator for the last 2 years. He's at Middle Tennessee State now. But I can remember a couple of games, specifically Indiana State. His offense really seemed to struggle with whenever the Sycamores they were up against Sycamores. What's a game where you kind of just felt like things weren't clicking, and maybe the scheme was off a little bit, and maybe would be the worst case scenario, so that they can go back and watch that one and maybe get an idea of what would the worst look like?
I'm trying to go back through the home games. I will say, if you look at just a couple weeks before the Limestone game, that was easily one of. Now, a couple of those, there were some turnovers there in the first half, but that was with same quarterback Brooks, same freshman guy, who really honestly had a pretty solid outing in that game too. But you can just tell, you went fast forward. That was our homecoming game on whatever, middle of the month, and then you fast forward 2 weeks to our last game of the season, and part of that is you're playing your big rival, whatever. But you just go look at those 2 weeks. There's clearly a difference of, okay, this didn't look that great, and then 2 weeks later, we're walking to a game almost going, can we really beat LR? Number 17 in the country. We just lost to Limestone at home on homecoming, and then this is what the offense looks like. I think that's kind of a good tale for what you're asking for.
And then do do you remember kind of what the offense looked like? Because I've been having a lot of people in my mentions on Twitter around this news, like, "Hey, is UNI going to be, an air raid offense all of a sudden?" And I think people are asking that because UNI has been known for some bruising running backs and pounding the ball. When they went to the national championship the one time, it was a 2-back system that kind of helped them get there, and they had a big bruiser, and then they had a guy who had a little bit of speed, and so there's a lot of people concerned. I would say last year they were already kind of in air raid territory. They're taking about 90% of their snaps out of the shotgun last year. The only time I can think that they would go under center is on the fourth and short conversion kind of tush push situation. What did you remember in that respect to the offense?
Yeah, you're not going to have a lot of, at least what we've done at Wingate, you're not going to have a lot of under center stuff, not going to have a lot of, power eye, single back, 2 tight end. We ran a lot of spread stuff, a lot of, pistol, a lot of shotgun, everything really. I don't, trying to think off the top of my head. If it wasn't to run a QB sneak, I'm not sure we got under center this year. And that's kind of the way college football is. I think if you look at across the landscape, how many teams are getting in, 2 running back, 2 tailback, 2, fullback, whatever you want to call it, I formation, 21, not a lot of people are doing that right now. I will say, and kind of going back to what I think I was talking about a little bit earlier, I think it was impressive just that the team looked different. The way we played, and he handled 2 different types of quarterbacks. And even while you're running some of the same stuff, you could tell it was more of an RPO look, read option look, trying to get Bell running downhill. And that was really for our first 5 weeks of the year. That was our most effective offense. You could tell, okay, now we have a guy that can really air it out. And I think he was more than willing. Our offense, Coach Long and, Falk were more than willing to lean into that.
And if I could sum up the quarterback position for UNI in the last 2 years, they had basically one guy who handled the majority of the snaps, save for mop-up duty and maybe a couple of times where he got shaken up. I never missed significant time. But whenever we'd ask Coach about how he was performing to the level that he was, he'd always say, well, it's all about confidence. Is confidence a word you'd use to describe both quarterbacks when they were on the field this year?
Oh, yes, I would agree with that. I think Bell was just kind of again, you just can just watch, probably not quite the passer that Bentley was, his younger kind of counterpart, but I mean, named a captain before the team, one of the things, yes, for sure, just the way he played. And then Bentley, I think, to come in as a freshman and, final game of the year, again, like going back to the LR game, I think he had like 400 yards of offense. I mean, that's just confident stuff, and can kind of tell that it's not like the reins are on, the leashes weren't on. It was okay, go play. Like, we believe in you.
Well, if I have learned anything, and hopefully our listeners have learned anything, it's we need to go watch the Lenoir-Rhine game, right?
I know.
Ben,
I said
thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think I'm gonna go turn it on when I get home from work tonight and really get the scout going there, because
game highlights are on the Wingate Bulldogs YouTube page.
There you go. There's the plug, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time. Even he's a pro. I missed the interview yesterday. I couldn't figure out my computer. It was giving me a bunch of issues. He's like, hey, no problem. I'll catch you tomorrow. And here he is right on time. He was 3 minutes early, actually. So, Ben, thank you so much for joining us all the way from North Carolina.
Of course, Ben. I appreciate it.